In 1978, Superman the movie came out. Now that title may make the movie sound like it's really cheesy, but that's just because it is really cheesy. Welcome back to another Small Damn Productions review. Sorry about the break in between videos over the past week. I went to the beach. Actually, come to think of it, other than that, I was just procrastinating. But anyway, in the last review, I asked you guys to comment down below whether or not you wanted me to keep going with the Star Trek reviews or do something different before going back to the Star Trek reviews. Nobody commented. So instead, I just decided I'll get back to the Star Trek reviews eventually. But for the rest of this month, I'd like to review some of the movies that have been made that star everybody's favorite overpowered, overhyped fictional character who wears blue tights, Superman. DC has gotten a really bad rap in recent years. From Man of Steel to Batman vs. Superman, those movies were all panned. Suicide Squad, I think everybody just forgot about. Wonder Woman was actually pretty well received, even though I didn't think it was that much better than Batman vs. Superman or Man of Steel. And Justice League, panned. One thing, however, that people tend to forget is that for a while, DC was actually making movies that were getting pretty well received critically. And the first of those was released in 1978. The Richard Donner directed, Christopher Reeve starring, Mario Puzo written classic from 1978, grossing $166 million. Superman. The movie! Superman was born in 1899 on the planet Krypton. He was sent down to Earth in a space pod that looked like a marble. And when it reached Earth, he was taken in to an orphanage in which he lifted a cradle above his head. Oh my gosh, who can lift a cradle above their head? Over the next few years, Superman outran trains, lifted steel beams, and got shot, but survived. He took to the streets in 1938 and started busting up criminals who were doing bad things. Okay, I might have made up that stuff about him being born in 1899, and the whole taking to the streets thing might have been a little bit over-dramatized, but anyway, the first Superman comic was released in June of 1938, 80 years ago. It featured Superman committing acts of coerced confession, breaking and entering, destroying property. Superman was basically Batman originally. Cinematic adaptations of Superman have been around since 1941, when the Fleischer brothers released their cartoon adaptation of the comics. I saw those cartoons as a child, on DVD obviously, I'm not that old, and I loved them. Even today they hold up well. Very well executed in design, animation, and the plots are just simple enough to make them entertaining. The first actor who played Superman visually was not in a movie, but at the 1939 World's Fair. Can you imagine just walking along through the fairgrounds, and then you see this guy who looks like he was from some big top show walking past? Like, not everybody knew about Superman yet. So, I'm sure a lot of people seeing somebody in blue tights in public, that would have probably been awkward. Superman's feature film debut was in the early 50s, where George Reeves played him in Superman vs. the Mole People. That is the worst, dumbest movie title I've ever seen, except for like 500 others that are dumber. Superman had been depicted many times, but it wasn't until the 1978 classic that I'm reviewing today that he was really depicted in a serious light. Because, I mean, it's hard to take someone who goes around in tights and fights crime seriously. But this movie managed to pull it off pretty well. Richard Donner was brought in to direct the movie. Casting for Superman was difficult. Many actors and just everyday celebrities were considered. Muhammad Ali was actually considered at one point. Why is that so easy for me to picture? Also in the cast, Lex Luthor, played by Gene Hackman, who refused to shave his head for the role. Lois Lane, played by Margaret Kidder. And Marlon Brando as Kal-El. Despite having only 12 minutes of screen time, Marlon Brando was paid well beyond what most of the rest of the cast was paid. For a while after this movie, he was the highest paid actor in movie history. If you don't know what the plot of this movie is, you've probably been living under a rock since 1938. Superman tells the story of Kal-El, a father who dies. When his planet blows up, to be exact. Before dying, he puts his infant son in a spiked Christmas tree ornament and sends him to Earth. Upon landing on Earth, Superman is discovered by a husband and wife known as the Kents. They kidnap him and raise him as their own. However, as Superman grows up, he begins to find himself possessed of incredible powers. Faster than light, apparently, as he can go around the Earth like in a second. Superman at first wants to show off his powers, and does so by running past a train like a wild thing.
And my pride.
But his dad assures him that he is here for a reason, and that he shouldn't use his powers recklessly like that. He dies from a heart attack shortly after. Superman is widely distraught at the funeral, saying, all those abilities, all those powers, and I couldn't even save him. This motivates Superman to do the best for humanity, and after training in the Fortress of Solitude for several years, he goes to Metropolis disguised as mild-mannered newspaper reporter Clark Kent and begins quietly saving the day while trying to woo news reporter Lois Lane. The music was done by John Williams, one of the best composers ever. His famous Superman theme, dun 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 dun, should really have won the Oscar for that year. The main titles for the film alone cost millions of dollars. However, it was all worth it, as the movie worldwide made $166 million. The second highest grossing film of 1978, beaten only by Grease, of all things. Like, seriously? What kind of society? Critics loved the movie, and audiences did too. It even won the Special Achievement Award at the Oscars for its visual effects. 40 years later, Superman the movie is still a beloved classic by many. But what do I think of Superman the movie? Well, this is just my opinion, so why do you even bother? This movie's kind of like King Kong, where the special effects and a lot of the other stuff is really dated, but the story is very entertaining. Christopher Reeve does a fantastic job of playing Superman. He's almost certainly the best actor to ever play the character. He pulls off the double personalities of Clark Kent and Superman so well that it's almost believable that they'd be two different people. Gene Hackman is the perfect cartoony villain with his portrayal of Lex Luthor. And Marlon Brando, despite his relatively few minutes of screen time, leaves quite an impression. The movie's over 2 hours long, but I was never even close to being bored during it. The story hits all the beats that it needs to, and the acting only complements it. And I've already mentioned the music. Seriously, the soundtrack to this movie is absolute mastery. I'm gonna have to learn the theme on the guitar. Dang it! Superman's theme song is literally one of the best things I have ever... Special effects are quite dated, which brings me to my next part of this review: the problems with the corniness of it all. You know, it really has this sort of corniness about it that sometimes it's charming, but other times it is... I swear, I am unintentionally censoring my points against this movie. And of course the turning around the earth thing at the end is the most ridiculous thing ever, though cinematically it works pretty well. Despite these potential problems, Star Trek the Motion Picture... What? Despite these potential problems, Superman the movie is really good. The charm is good, the cinematography is good, the script is good, everything about this movie is good, except for the things I just mentioned, and some minor plot holes. But, like I said in my Citizen Kane review, plot holes don't matter! Okay, they do a little bit, but not much. All in all, this is a great movie that you should really check out. Please comment down below if you want me to review Superman 2 next, or if you want me to go straight on to Superman Returns or one of the DCEU movies, preferably Man of Steel. This has been Signature, and until next time, get a load of this show-offness that probably isn't even that good. Also in the cast was Margaret Kidder as Lois Lane, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, who received to blah, bah, duh. Oh well. He at first wants to use his powers to show off, but after a little pep talk from Dad, he decides to